just not very well kept up. And I had picked this car up, and I was on my way south and riding down the highway and not paying much attention, and my wife will tell you that I'm pretty much of a lead foot anyway. And I was driving along, and people were passing me, and I was hitting these bad places in the road, and it was just a hectic. Nobody uses the turn indicators, and if you get ready to change lanes, you just change. And I guess it's a lot like Florida Avenue here. You just do whatever you want to do. And I looked down at the speedometer, and it said 130. And of course, while I was getting my heart out of my throat, I realized it was kilometers per hour, which I think translates somewhere around 85 or 80, something like that. The speed limit over there is 90, which is 55 or so miles per hour. So it's right in there, but the numbers really scare you. I went to the concierge at the Sheraton before leaving for Gaza and talked with him and got the map. He showed me how to get out of town. He also asked me if I was sure I wanted to go there. And I said yes. He said, well, I want to tell you that the drivers are crazy. And of course, many of you know that in the West Bank and in the Gaza, the automobile tags are blue, and the Israeli citizens' automobile tags are yellow. And the difference, the rental car, I had not planned to keep it a week. I was going to keep it a day here and a day there and go here and go there. By the time I got through adding all that up, I was better off to keep it for a week. I had expected to maybe use it later on, but I met someone who had their own automobile, and they were able to drive me around. During the first week, I spent most of my time around Jerusalem and out to Jericho and north up to Ramallah and Nablus and Jenin, in this area, looking around and just nosing around and seeing what was going on. The second week I was there, during the first week I went to the holy sites too. That was important for me. One of the places that I wanted to go back and spend some real time at was the Western Wall. That for me is a very spiritual, marvelous, lovely, meaningful place. And when I went in January, I just didn't have enough time to spend there at that wall and do what I wanted to do. The other place I wanted to spend some real time at was the Garden Tomb. And went to church there on Sunday morning and went a couple of other times. I was close enough where I could walk from the Jerusalem Hilton, which is up on a hill on the east side of town, overlooking the entire new city and the old city of Jerusalem, with the Mount of Olives behind the city. And it was an absolute joy to be in that place for 10 days and to have that kind of view. But I was close enough where I could walk to the old city, didn't have to use a cab even when I didn't have the car. One day at the Western Wall, I met a young man about my age whose name was Moshe, which, as you know, is Moses. It is kind of interesting to be able to tell people that you toured Israel with Moses. Moshe is, I hope, an employee, part-time employee of one of the bus companies in the Jerusalem area. He was as interested in what's going on in America as I was and am about what's going on over there, and we just filled each other with information about what is going on in each of our lives, in each of our countries. And Moshe offered his services to me to drive his car for me and take me around and show me he had a lot of free time because of his part-time work. His car was an old Opel. I kept looking for the baling wire that was holding it together. But he drove that thing like it was a brand new Ferrari. And he and I went to Jericho. We went to Kalkilia, which is up about halfway up to Haifa. The second week that I was there, the week that Moshe was driving me around and we were going places together, we really got pretty much out of control. And that's why I ended up coming home early. When I say out of control, I mean that we began to get a little brazen about what we were doing. On any given day, if you go to the concierge at the desk of the hotel, wherever you're staying, but especially at a very quality place like the Jerusalem Hilton, where they're very concerned about your safety and what's happening, you go to them and you say, you know, I don't want to get into trouble. Tell me the places, the cities I should stay away from today. And they will tell you. But we got to the place where I would go to the concierge and ask him, you know, where should we not go? And that's where we'd go. And while that may sound really crazy, and I guess it is, at the time it was the only way I could come up with to be somewhere where things were happening, where we could understand what was going on. I took the Jerusalem Post every morning, which I brought back with me. That helped us some to decide where we were going to go. The news every afternoon, late in the afternoon when we were there to catch it in English, helped out on the hotel television. We ended up going to places where they had just either come off curfew, and I'll explain in a moment what curfew is, a very different kind of curfew over there. Either a place that had just come off curfew, or hopefully a place that was on curfew, so that we could actually see what was happening. Now, you might think that if a town is under curfew, they're not going to let you in. That was almost always the case, but they almost always will let you through and see to it that you keep going. My first trip to Ramallah, which is just north of Jerusalem, while I had the rental car, came after they'd had some problems there, and there were a couple of people shot, and they're always throwing rocks, so you don't hear about that much anymore. And I was stopped outside the city, and the IDF stopped me and checked my passport and said, well, you know, it's really not safe to go in there right now. We'll escort you back down the highway. So they escorted me back with a Jeep back about 10 kilometers, I guess, away from Ramallah. And they stayed there to watch me, to make sure I didn't turn around or didn't go a direction I wasn't supposed to go. Anyway, we started going to the towns where they were having problems to see what was going on. We went to Jenin while it was under partial curfew. But one of the strong curfews that we experienced was in Kalkilia, where a couple of people had been hurt badly, near an area where an Arab collaborator had been found murdered. Kalkilia was almost shut down. Another little town whose name I have real problems with, and I think I wrote it on here, is near Tekoa. There are two towns near Tekoa, which is way down in the south here, Seir and Efrat. Efrat was under partial curfew and had some real strong problems while we were there. The strongest curfew we experienced, this is what happens. The troops go in and shut the town down. Your stores are closed. Your homes are closed. You take the automobiles in the city and put them in a central place. In this particular city, they put them in the schoolyard. All the tractors, all the cars, all the motor scooters and motorcycles and motorbikes, everything into the schoolyard, barbed wire around it. The military moved into the schoolhouse, and then they patrolled the city. And this was for 1 month. They cut off electricity, they cut off water, and you are not allowed to leave your home. They were arresting little old ladies who were sneaking out of the house under the cover of darkness to go into their garden to pick a tomato so that their family would have something to eat. They were chasing down young kids, 9 years old, 14 years old, who were throwing rocks and beating them. You just simply, you don't come out of the house when you're under curfew. A young man that I met who was working in the Jerusalem Hilton, the name was Dror, D-R-O-R. In their language, his name means freedom. He is a member of the Army Reserves. He is about 25, 26 years old. He was in the Lebanon War, served there. He is a sergeant. He was getting ready to be called back up the week after I left for 1 month service in Jenin. Jenin is to the north. It's one of the most dangerous towns in Israel for an Israeli. Very dangerous. He was going to serve there for 1 month to help enforce curfew and to help enforce the laws against throwing rocks and all the rest of it. He must serve 2 months active duty every year until he's 55. And I look at that and I think to myself, man, if that was you, you'd still have 7 more years to serve. 2 months a year in the military. 2 months a year in the military. And Dror is the one who said what I mentioned Sunday, I hate myself for what I'm doing. And who said, they're not hiring us. They're not paying us to shoot, to beat children. But yet that's what they're doing. They're dangerous children. They're dangerous children, but they are still children. And Dror talks about his responsibility to his country, and he is part of a growing sentiment among the military. Many of the military are going to jail rather than taking up arms against their Arab brothers. They're just not doing it. They're going to jail. A lot of them are leaving the country because they're not going to take up arms against their Arab brothers. Men and women alike are just flat leaving. And it's something the Israeli government is concerned about. There's a growing movement. And in their words, it goes like this. Give them Jenin. Give the Palestinians Nablus. Give them Qalqilia. Give them Ramallah. Give them Hebron. What does Israel need with these cities? What does Israel need with these cities? And the overriding concern as far as the government is concerned is, if you give up an inch, you begin to give up everything. While I was there, I couldn't help but notice the weapons. All of these reservists walking around and the military, active military out in the field, walking around town, reservists with loaded weapons. Men and women alike. A military presence that for us would be absolutely alarming and a presence we would not put up with. Write our congressman and get that straightened out. But it's a part of their history. I couldn't help but think, with all these people walking around with loaded automatic weapons, what if they get mad at each other during some kind of ordinary argument and start shooting? Loaded guns everywhere you look. The ordinary Israeli, as I mentioned, there's a difference in the color of the tags. The Israeli tag is yellow, and when they're riding through these West Bank towns, they are a target for the Palestinian youths. I mentioned some of the tricks they're using on Sunday morning. That's taking the galvanized nails and cutting the head off and driving them halfway down the pavement. And you go through and your tires are shredded. Pouring oil on dangerous curves up in the mountains. I don't need to explain what that does. Throwing gas bombs. The ordinary traveler through the West Bank, the Israeli, now carries not only a pistol, but also carries a fire extinguisher, and they don't wear their seat belts. They're afraid they're going to get trapped in the automobile when somebody throws a gas bomb in. And it is amazing that no Israeli West Bank settler has been killed yet. They have been injured, but many Palestinians have been killed. And I wondered when I looked around over there, and I looked at the Arab youths, and I said, you know, what is going on here? How is it that all of these Israeli civilians can have a pistol in their car, and all of these soldiers out here with weapons, and the Palestinians not have any weapons? I don't believe that. I said to myself, somewhere, somebody's got weapons hidden away. And the reason they're not using them is because Yasser Arafat has said, make the Israelis look like the bullies and the bad guys. Do not use weapons. And just in the past few days, there was an article in the paper about some of the weapons they have discovered. And now the Palestinians are admitting that they have weapons hidden away, but they don't want to use them because they're afraid they're going to swing international opinion that might favor the Israelis. During my course of time over there, what grew in my heart and mind was a compassion for the Palestinians and a compassion for the Israelis. And several times in my journal I wrote things like, maybe God is the only one who has an answer to all of this. And I think that's true. But to talk with people, I talked with Palestinians through Moshe, and talked with Hebrews through Moshe, and talked with some English-speaking Israelis who want it to stop. And the young people know no other way to be heard except through acts of violence. The lasting impression for me is this, and that is that intifada, which is the uprising, is no longer an uprising. It is a way of life. They are becoming accustomed, the Israelis are becoming accustomed to riding through. The army is making available to Israeli citizens Uzi automatic weapons to carry in their cars. And for 50 or 60 shekels a month, they will rent to an Israeli civilian a radio so that they can call the army. And if you leave home at night, you call the army, you tell them where you're going. But preferably, if you live in the West Bank, especially around these danger spots, you don't leave home at night. If you're an Israeli, you stay home. Because you can bet there's somebody out there waiting. In these two little towns that I mentioned a while ago, Seir and Efrat, near Tekoa, there is a sign outside of Efrat which says, turn right if you're an Israeli. Don't go into Efrat. They have taken the sign down several times, the Palestinians. And each time the sign has been taken down and someone has driven into Efrat, they have burned the car and let the person go. Let them walk out, which that in itself is surprising. But the automobile has been burned. There are a couple of areas here near Tekoa where that kind of thing is happening. If you come up and look at this map afterwards, you will find a legend on it. There is a black circle. Well, first of all, the yellow are the places that I traveled while I was there. Some I went 2 or 3 times. Nablus about 4 times by the time it was over with. The circles here are where raids by the Israeli Defense Forces were carried out. And when you talk about a raid, 200 or 300 Israeli Defense Force troops will go into the town through the houses, and they have a list of names of youths for whom they are looking. And they pick the youth up and take them off and imprison them. Sometimes their parents too, but mostly they're going through there looking for troublemaking youths whose names have been turned in. Each of these black circles is a raid by the Israeli Defense Force, and each of the stars is where Palestinian collaborators' bodies have been found, presumably killed by their own people for collaborating with the Israelis. Okay. And now about my departure. from there. On the last day that I was there, which was Sunday, what was the date, honey? September the 18th, was that it? We've been not all that far because we'd heard reports that some things were going on there that might be interesting to us. It was late in the day and it was too late to be going because you don't want to be out after dark in the West Bank. It's just not a good idea. There aren't any drive-in movies anyway. We got up south of Nablus, and we had stopped to talk to a group of Palestinians on the side of the road. And I don't know how many were there. My children keep asking me and other folks, and each time they ask me, I tell them there were more of them. I guess it's because through what happened, it looked like there were a lot more than there were. But my best recollection is between a dozen and 2 dozen, and I'm not sure that that's right. But we had stopped and we're talking to them, and they were apparently agitated. And Moshe began to talk with them, and they began to talk with him, and they became more aggravated, and he became angry. And I told him in some pretty explicit language, let's go. It was really kind of scary. He turned to me and he said, you don't know what they're saying. I never did find out. He turned to talk to them again in their native tongue, and a lot of things happened at the same time. Both the doors were popped open on the car, and he was dragged out one side, and I was dragged out the other. And I remember my glasses hitting the pavement, and this lens popped out. It's got a few little scratches on it. But all the dumb things you do, I reached down to pick up my glasses, knowing not what else to do, I guess. And about the same time, there was a loud explosion, and I said, well, you know, I'm going home to Jesus. It's all over with. And it was really a very very scary moment. It turns out later that the explosion was a rifle-launched tear gas grenade. And the Israeli forces were watching what was going on because we had a yellow tag on the car. We were Israelis, as far as they knew. If we'd have had the blue Arab tag on the car, with all the commotion, I'm convinced they just would have sprayed us all with bullets. I mean, that's what they're doing. When there's a commotion, they spray them down. But anyhow, they saw the Israeli tag, they were watching what was going on, they fired a tear gas grenade, and it hit the side of his car right behind where they were pulling me out. The tear gas was all over the place. The Israeli Defense Forces grabbed a hold of me and pulled me away from the Arabs. In doing so, they hit my face on the side of the Jeep. I came home with a nice bump, and the side of my face was all messed up. And I got a hip that still bothered me. I think they pulled it out of joint or something. But anyhow, we ended up, Moshe and myself, in this Israeli Defense Force Jeep, and they began to question us. They did take time to dress my wounds and put whatever that stuff is. What is it, honey? Betadine. They put betadine all over me, which helped the infection but made it look 20 times worse than it was. They questioned Moshe and myself for several hours and talked to us about what we were doing there. And, well, anyhow, 2 things that they seemed to take for granted over there was, number one, was I had a camera, which I didn't. I didn't take a camera because I knew that several Americans had their cameras confiscated, and a couple of them, one at least, had been detained because they had a camera taking pictures in the wrong place. So I didn't want that to happen. They assumed that I had a camera, and then at the airport they assumed I had a gun. Anyway, I don't know why they assume all that. I guess because what they lived through all the time over there. They did not tell me to leave the country. What they said to me was, I told them I was a minister. It didn't seem to make a lot of difference. Maybe if I'd have been a rabbi. They told me that their assistance was available to me to get me back to the hotel and wait for me to pack my duds and then take me to Ben Gurion Airport. And they said, after today, our assistance will not be available to you at all. And even if I did not feel that that meant it's time for the Yankee to go home, I still would have gone. I was very uncomfortable at that point because everything I'd gone through. So they took me to the hotel and waited while I packed my bags, and took me to Ben Gurion Airport and turned me over to the airport security. They questioned me for 4 hours, I guess 5 hours. I don't remember. I remember calling Tracy after it was all over with, telling her I was coming home. And, I was really tired and angry and hurt and bruised and mad at myself for what I'd gotten myself into, because it literally was all my fault. I went too far with what I was doing, but I'm glad that I did. I also want to say that the Israeli Defense Forces hurt me, and they hurt Moshe, but they hurt us, getting us away from something that would have been worse. And the injuries that we received were unintentional. And I'm personally glad they were there, because I'm convinced if we'd been left in the hands of the Palestinians that it would have been much worse than what it was. During my questioning, I'm almost through now. During my questioning, I became very concerned because with the IDF and then with airport security, I didn't lie to him about where I'd been, but I came close. I was kind of vague, mostly to protect Moshe, because I didn't know what they were doing with him at that time. I didn't see him again. I don't know what's going on with him. But in the middle of explaining to them where I'd been and what I'd been doing, I remembered two very damaging things, and one of them was this map that was folded up in my suitcase with 4 or 5 other maps that I have folded up over here. These maps are Holy Land maps, the typical, here are the shrines, here's how you get there. This I consider interesting information, and the Israelis would consider it espionage. I was very concerned about that. The other was this journal that I wrote while I was there, keeping track of where I went and what I did and a lot of what I felt, personal and otherwise, that I'd put Tracy's name on and the address in case something happened to me. Hopefully she'd get it. This was in my carry-on case, and I knew that if they picked up either one of them and looked at them and read them, that I was going to be in for a long night. When they went through my suitcase, they picked up all the maps. The religious maps and this map, all of them folded up and stacked. They looked at 3 or 4 of these, opened them up, and didn't open this one, and stuck them back in my suitcase. They went into my carry-on, and I had this journal stuck down next to my Bible. They reached in and picked up my Bible and the journal with one hand, looked at them this way, and stuck them back in. And I said, "Thank you. I appreciate it." From that point on, it was a wait for the plane. Call Tracy and tell her I'm coming home, and you'll have to ask her about the forlorn individual she picked up at the Orlando airport. I was ready to come home. I wrote in my journal, and I will share with you that one of the things that this trip helped me to do was to appreciate my wife and my family more, and to appreciate my country more. You know, you take off from the airport here and you land over there. You better put your mind in a different gear, or you'll be in trouble very quickly. And I will share with you my very basic belief right now, and that is Israel is a very dangerous place to go. But I also believe that being said, if you're going with a tour group that you feel is secure, that has a good track record, they do protect the tours. But I believe that everyone should know up front that no matter what kind of protection the tours have, you can get into it. I want to share these shirts with you. You can come up and look at them afterwards, because I'm sure you probably can't read them. I bought them in Tel Aviv because for me they symbolize a frame of mind that I encountered time and time again over there, and especially with some of the Israeli Defense Forces. Most of them were very courteous and nice, but some of them were not so. This one has a picture of an F-16 fighter on it. It says, "Visit Israel before Israel visits you." Is that message clear? This is a takeoff on one of our favorite American expressions. It shows an Uzi automatic weapon, and it says, "Uzi does it." And this one